Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Many people speculate that Hamas is an Israeli creation. And I wanted to touch up on this subject in this video to hopefully clarify a bit of background as to the establishment of the movement and whether Israel definitely did have a say, or did it support its establishment, or did it actually create it. So firstly, I want to elaborate on the fact that Hamas as an organization was established in 1987 as a direct response to the Palestinian Intifada, the first uprising. It was called the Intifada in 1987. This Intifada, the Palestinian uprising, it came obviously as a response to constant Israeli aggression, oppression, occupation, and killing of the Palestinian people. A very tense killing of a group of Palestinians sparked the Intifada, and it led to many years of revolting and uprising against the Israeli authorities. So that's number one. Did Israel have a role in creating them? Now, historically, there is no evidence to show that Israel had any role to play when it came to the establishment of Hamas. Saying that, their major rival at the time, in the late 80s, actually since the 60s, is the Fatah movement, the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So many people say that Israel turned a blind eye on the strengthening of Hamas and funding reaching them and stuff like that, which, to be completely honest with you, there is no verified evidence that Israel made it any easier for Hamas as a movement to be established. However, they probably didn't mind a group gaining momentum to rival their traditional, historical Palestinian opposing group, which was the PLO. So there is no direct evidence that Israel had any involvement in Hamas's creation. Saying that, what led to the creation of Hamas as a movement is more important to why they were established. Israel as a country was established in 1948, occupying other people's lands, committing mass genocides, expulsions, kicking people out of their homes, out of their lands, and constantly oppressing people. And when we talk about a resistance movement being created as a response to the acts of Zionist Israel as it was established, since it was established, we're talking about a natural human response. Any natural human being would resist oppression. As a matter of fact, it becomes a duty to resist oppression. If you're seeing that any other means are not working in you getting your rights, I mean, would a group of people want to go and establish a party trying to fight an occupation if everything was okay and good? I don't think so. They're called the Islamic Resistance Movement. Why would anyone want to establish a resistance movement if everything is okay? If you want to establish a political party in any normal country, you would call it, I don't know, Justice Party, Freedom Party, whatever it is. You wouldn't call it a resistance movement. So resistance is not a goal, it's a means. So from the Palestinian perspective, and any other nation under occupation and that's facing oppression, it's natural all across the world, Latin America, Europe, Asia, Africa, many countries, established resistance movement to face occupation and ongoing oppression. So that's very important to highlight. And many people take it for granted to, the stuff that the luxuries that they have in their life. Many people call luxuries, Lots of people in Western countries live a very comfortable life. I mean, the last thing you'd worry about is someone killing you or occupying your house, isn't it? Many people discuss about what type of meal you want to have, what coffee you want to grab, what you want to do after work. So when you talk about the Palestinian case, you're talking about people who are deprived of basic liberties. What basic liberties? Liberties such as movement, self-determination, right to work in many cases, right to access basic human rights, aid, food, permits to build, all of these things, right to live in your own home. When you talk about the occupied territories, you're talking about people under constant threat of being evacuated from their homes. Look at the West Bank, for example. Israel systematically kicks people out of their lands, puts in settlers in who came from New York or whichever other European country. Many of them are very new to Israel, but the country offers them freebies and cushy conditions just to come and live on Palestinian land. And in many cases, they offer Palestinians vast amounts of money just to leave their homes because the country wants to control them. So the establishment of Hamas as a movement, or any other movement for that matter, that resists occupation isn't something abnormal, isn't something unnatural. It's completely natural. Now, many people also reiterated the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu and what he said in front of the Likud party in 2019, that we need a strong Hamas to oppose the PLO. The PLO, which is more internationally recognized, basically. So I'll put a comment on that, but before I reach that, we need to go back to 2005. In 2005, Israel withdrew from Gaza. Its settlements in Gaza, they faced constant resistance from the Palestinian resistance movement against their ongoing occupation of Gaza that was occupied in 1967 alongside the West Bank. They withdrew from the settlements in Gaza, but they didn't withdraw from the settlements in the West Bank. And that was a tactical move. You see, the Prime Minister at the time, Ariel Sharon, he had this demon lawyer who was advising him. And they wanted to establish a situation that would make the possibility of achieving a Palestinian state on the 1967 borders impossible. So they strategically thought it out and carefully planned it very well, that we need to make a split between Gaza and the West Bank. How do we do it? We do it by withdrawing from this place and staying in the other. Because they withdrew, Hamas as a movement back then, they didn't participate in elections that the PLO had at the time, because they described them as elections under occupation. So they resisted the Oslo Accords in 1993 and the whole peace process. They didn't really believe in it and the way it was conducted, which quite frankly proved to be a complete failure, because the Palestinians were due to receive a state, but then the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated in 1995. People who sit in the current Israeli government actually liked the fact that he was assassinated back then. The peace process died. So Israel was supposed to give the Palestinians a state on the 1967 borders, but when Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, they started to expand further and further into West Bank territories, and the number of settlers expanded from tens of thousands to almost 800,000 now. More land grabbing, more oppression, more unbelievable situations and conditions that the people live in, checkpoint to checkpoint, kids having to cross school to school, from their school to their house, and etc., back and forth through checkpoints, sometimes climbing over walls and in holes in walls, because Israel built walls in the middle of Palestinian neighborhoods and towns, splitting them because they wanted to control the other territories. So it made it completely impossible. So Hamas was one of the movements that resisted and did not agree with that path after 1993. But then when Israel withdrew from Gaza in 2005, they decided to participate in the Palestinian elections because Israel withdrew from that part of Gaza, and they won democratically in 2006. There were a couple of fights between them and the rival movement due to multiple disagreements on key elements and strong positions in the government. Israel wanted its allies to hold these positions, so they were basically in control, albeit after democratic elections in 2006. That's a different detail that I spoke about previously. I can speak about it in another video. So they created a de facto situation of a Gaza Strip, a Gaza entity, and a West Bank entity. And ever since then, and because also the Palestinians, you had the approach of the official PLO of diplomacy, non-violent resistance, going through the negotiations with Israel that were constantly fruitless. Israel was just buying time with them and using them to expand further into West Bank territories. People are humiliated on a daily basis. So they didn't go down that path, but it created a de facto situation of a Gaza Strip on its own and the West Bank as a separate kind of entity, which is something strategic. Now, that leads me back to Benjamin Netanyahu and what he said in 2019. What he said in 2019, because Ariel Sharon was his ally previously, is a continuation of that undeclared policy. Even though, many people say it, but they don't like go in front of the world and boast about it. They need to keep it on the low like they do with many other things. So from his perspective, when he said that he needed to have Hamas split from the PLO, he thought that by doing that, he's weakening the diplomatic efforts that the Palestinians have on an international scale. And indeed, Israel didn't pay directly, obviously, but with Israel knowing and with its permission, billions of dollars went into Gaza through Qatar, through other countries as well, billions of dollars. And that also states, by the way, how wrong the current debate is, especially when this war started, that we don't negotiate with terrorists, yeah, and all of that nonsense, because you've been negotiating with them all of that time, and you've had dealings with them. But the problem is that Israel always thinks that it can provide people with a couple of things here and there, and then they forget about the cause as a whole, where Hamas as a movement didn't. They didn't, okay, yeah, we get the money, but day-to-day stuff, but we have a cause. We fight for a bigger cause. We want to liberate our lands. We want equal rights. And as a matter of fact, one of their spokespersons in Lebanon, his name is Osama Hamdan, just said, one day, I think it was today even, that if there was a way of us getting our rights without fighting, we would love that. But the fact of the matter is, Israel historically did not give any rights without us fighting them. So if they didn't have that path from their perspective, Israel wouldn't give them anything. So I hope I clarified a little bit on that subject. And in short, no, it wasn't an Israeli creation. However, Israel didn't mind, even through back channels dealing with Hamas, allowing money in and negotiating with them as they are doing at the moment.